Hey, what's good, y'all? And welcome to another Armored Core 6 build video. Today is going to be a bit different because this video isn't just focused on one build. Instead, this is going to consist of multiple builds that can help you S-rank all the missions in the game. These are builds I personally use to get S-rank on every mission. So before we get into the builds, I want to get this out of the way. What you get for S-ranking every mission is an achievement and an emblem, and that's literally it. If you wanted to get another hidden armor piece or perhaps something else to show for it, there really isn't anything besides the achievement. So to get this video on the road, we will focus on our two general builds first before going into our more dedicated setups for those peskier missions. These are going to be general purpose builds for most missions in the game, and they will either consist of dual SMGs or dual needle guns in combination with Rusty's laser slicer for our big burst damage. These are both going to be lightweight builds meant to stay close and close distance quickly, outfitted with the parts you see on screen. These builds end up sharing a very similar part composition due to their incredibly similar playstyle of playing close, aiming for staggers, and capitalizing with heavy melee damage for direct hit damage. One thing you'll need to utilize on these builds to really get the most out of them is comboing that laser slicer combo into an assault armor. Since the laser slicer is one of the few melee weapons that doesn't launch the enemy far on the final hit, you can get a lot of extra damage from that assault armor, which is usually enough to dispatch an enemy AC without them being able to heal any damage. Since the builds are so similar, we should focus on their differences rather than their similarities, because you will tackle missions in almost the exact same way. I like to treat the dual SMG build as a weaker, easier to use dual needle gun build, since it has less stopping and stagger power than the needle gun setup, but it allows you to tackle missions with more enemies more easily due to its higher amount of reserve ammunition. While dual SMGs are less effective at dealing with ACs and bosses in the dual needle gun setup, it is still effective at dealing with them. The dual needle gun build is really strong at deleting enemy ACs and bosses with its high stagger values, but it does lack on ammo. I'd recommend bringing it on most missions with an enemy AC or a boss battle. If you want to bring this setup into missions with more enemies to deal with ACs and bosses at the end, you can swap the shoulder missiles for a laser handgun as a way to get through the levels without having to worry about ammo as much. Since the laser handgun has a high damage per shot and ammo count of 380, it'll be really helpful on certain missions such as eliminate the red guns and survey the uninhabited floating city, as those missions have a lot of enemies to deal with as well as bosses at the end. Now we're going to get into our more specialized builds for those missions that aren't as easy to tackle with those two builds I just previously showed you. To kick off our specialized setups, we will start with our fully dedicated melee build. Outfitted with the parts you see on screen, this build is focused on dealing with the Chapter 4 boss as quickly as possible, and we made an offshoot for the Ice War mission if you do need it, although I do believe it's easy enough to run with almost any build. This fully dedicated melee build is made to capitalize on openings the Chapter 4 final boss provides, but it's still not exactly easy to do. But, with that being said, we are able to always land a big head at the beginning because the boss always opens with the exact same attack, and it can be dodged in a variety of ways, but my preferred method is to go behind them, avoid the lasers, and then to dodge alongside the follow-up attack with a quick boost to the left, and then after doing that, recenter my camera, charge a laser lance, get the stagger with that, then just hit that fat pile bunker. Our Zimmerman shotgun is primarily meant to be a backup plan to finish off those little bit of attitude bar we couldn't fill ourselves. This isn't going to be a full guide on how to fight the boss, so you'll have to find the other openings yourself to land that charged laser lance, but this is the build I run for the mission, and it's the one I found the most success with. I've showed a couple of my friends, and it helped them get through it really quickly. The Ice War mission is one of the easiest missions in the game, and I believe that all of you guys could figure it out for yourself, but I was told that I should add this advice anyways. My findings were that the Ice Worm likes to come from the same place for the beginning of each phase, so you can use that to your advantage by running to where he will appear and line up a stun needle shot. In phase 3 he takes 2 stun needles to break his shield, so in the footage I tried to shoot him with 2 at the same time to see if it broke instantly, and it did not. Our energy weapon build is a reverse joint setup with the parts you see on screen. This build was meant for the missions Take the Uninhabited Floating City and a New Game Plus mission named Coral Export Denial. It's set up in this way to have a multitude of weapons that will dispatch enemies in groups quickly. The plasma rifle is to kill those small groups with only one shot, the laser rifle is meant to deal with bigger enemies, and the missiles are meant to help by allowing you to multitask by setting a barrage for an enemy and looking elsewhere. For the mission Take the Uninhabited Floating City, all you need to do to obtain the S rank is avoid having the Xylem shield break. So as long as the Xylem remains at full HP, you'll get that S rank. A big piece of advice is that after the last of the snipers, you'll have a group of suicide drones that will attempt to attack the Xylem. You can run back to the Xylem and use our pulse protection we put on the build. You want to jump over to 250 to 260 altitude to block those suicide drones from even hitting the shield. For the Coral Export Denial mission, every weapon we put on this build will dispatch a transport helicopter with only one shot, so it's really all about just getting in positions that will allow you not to miss a single ship, as that's all you'll end up needing for the S rank. Finally, we have our last dedicated build. This is a missile boat that is dedicated to 2 New Game Plus missions in specific. Those missions being Escort the Mining Ship and Coral Release, which ends up being the final mission of the game. You can make it with all the parts shown on screen. This build uses a coral generator, which has an awful recharge delay, but almost instantly recharges upon the delay completing. So we're going to use that fact, that this is a tetrapod, to our full advantage by flying high and floating until we run out of fuel. Then once we land, our fuel will be entirely regenerated. As for tips for these missions, for the Escort the Mining Ship mission, we will utilize our assault boost to get high up and float to shoot the missiles below you. You just want to make good use of the compass to make sure to find the enemies below you, because it is annoying with how fast they move. For our final missile boat mission, we are going to be on Coral Release, the final mission in the game. On this mission, we will change our playstyle between Phase 1 and 2, using hard lock throughout all phases. For the first phase, we are going to utilize our hard lock on to avoid our locks transferring to small mobs, and allowing all our missiles to only focus on the boss. We are going to float above the boss for these missile barrages, and I only really recommend floating high for Phase 1, as the boss doesn't chase you really that hard in Phase 1. Phase 2, that changes. With how much the boss teleports and moves around, it's really not worth it to float. For Phase 2, I like to maintain the hard lock, but I take a different approach. I like to stay grounded and toss full barrages of missiles, and with that, I like to sneak in as many kicks as I can. Since our AC build is so heavy, that kick will add a decent amount of damage as well. On top of all of that, our missiles constantly stagger. I did this fight with this setup multiple times and got an S rank every time, because it is very forgiving on the HP. As long as you're above like 10k AP with no repair kits left, you'll be fine. This boss is incredibly forgiving on the damage. With all that being said, these are all just my personal recommendations, and these are things that I did that helped me. I don't think achieving all the S ranks is too hard of an achievement. I just wanted to kind of get out my findings and try and help other people for somebody who might be struggling. And I really just wanted to churn out S ranks as quickly as possible, so some of these builds just made it stupid easy to just get through some of these missions. So really, I just hope my findings could help some of y'all achieve the achievement yourselves. But that's neither here nor there. Stay safe and take care.